morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whomever you're doing. This is Antisocial Our Ish Show. And today on the Our Ish Show, we have somebody that I was so excited to bring to you because we're all going to have this guest topic in common. We're all going to kick the bucket. To talk a little bit about herself and what she does and how she does it and how she brings it to the world, we have Miss Amy Tudor, which makes us sound very British. Amy Tudor, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? Happy New Year.
Wicked Pizza, how are you? Happy New Year. Yes, it is a good Happy New Year because,
Yeah,
I'm not looking at news of the big orange menace right now. Yay.
exactly.
May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Eventually, sooner than
Yes,
later.
yes. Eventually. Yes,
Yes,
like all of us.
yes. Oh, we're gonna get that obituary, and I'm gonna be dancing so hard. Oh, do you know that? Just randomly throwing it out there because it's my pissed off comment of the day. Your vote is now illegal if you mail it in because he's now made it so that the post office can't justify your datum stamp. So,
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
yeah, that started today. So you
Oh,
can mail
great.
something on a Monday and it might not be stamped until, the Thursday that he thinks it's more convenient for himself. So,
Wow.
hmm,
Well, that's a way all around all the constitutional questions or anything like that, I guess, right? It's just a postal issue.
yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah,
Just blame the post guy,
that's
Oh,
right.
and it's always a guy.
Yes,
Men
supposedly.
cause all the problems. That's why
That's right.
the world should just be, as Queen Latifah says, a planet full of fat, happy lesbians. So, which I am down for. Okay, my darling, enough about my politicking. Um, I am so happy to meet you. For those who are unaware, Miss Amy Tudor, are you professor or doctor or?
I'm doctor technically, but I'm off duty because it's
Oh,
break. So you can just call
okay,
me Amy. Amy's fine.
okay. Well, Dr. Amy, I was raised by a doc, so I totally get it. Here's the thing. You're a little girl. Where'd you grow up?
A little bit in Atlanta, a little bit in Baltimore, a little bit in Virginia, a little bit in Kentucky, kind of all over.
So the police never found your parents.
Right, exactly.
This is good.
No, we just moved a lot. So, and I moved a lot. So,
Cool. Cool. But I was just thinking when you're young and you're like trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, as we all do, I wanted to be a dog or an astronaut. Um, when I was little. And I also wanted to be Maxwell Smart because at the beginning of the show of Get Smart, which people younger than us have no idea. Uh,
yeah.
you'd hear the walking of the hallway, and it would be click, click, click with the patent leather shoes. I wanted
Yeah.
I wanted to be Max Smart because of the click, click, click of the patent leather shoes, not realizing I could just buy shoes. Um, when you were a little kid, did you think I'm going to grow up and say, "Hey, dead people, let's be potty friends"?
No, not at all. When I was little, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and that stayed, which seems to be a really popular kid major or kid career. I've noticed that,
Thank you,
but
SpongeBob.
yeah, I guess, but mine was Jacques Cousteau. Speaking of things that people
Mine
younger than
too.
us,
Yes.
right? So mine was I wanted to be on the Calypso and
Have
be
the John
doing.
Denver song in the
Oh
background.
yeah. I can still hit that high note. And yeah, and that was what I wanted to do. And that actually carried for a really long time. And I was an English and bio major in undergrad.
Nice.
But me and math just do not get along. And if you can't do the mathematical sciences, I crashed into chemistry. And the minute I crashed into chemistry, I knew that and I had had some thought of being going to medical school. And once I realized that I couldn't do that, that just really closes the door on a lot of things. And
Yeah.
so I had to figure out the one thing that had been also a through line in my life was I was a writer, I was a poet, and so
You,
I
I
started.
like you. This is great. I love this.
If there's a career I can find that does not make money, I will find it. And so
Yes.
I was just completely, going for, I did apply to law school as an undergrad. I got in, but I decided not to go and took a year and became sort of a science editor.
Uh-huh.
for a company in DC that did aerospace stuff.
That's
And
cool. So you can't do the science, but you're English major, so you could think about the science.
yeah, and one of the big things, one of the big needs, of course, for things, and this is something that's carried over into my death work, is science is very hard for people to understand. And if you can, but they do really want to learn about it.
Hmm.
So if you can be a person who can take a really difficult scientific concept and boil it down in a way that somebody who is not a scientist can understand, there's a huge demand for that, and there still is. And so that ended up being what I ended up doing. Was I did do an MFA in creative writing. I took that year and did the aerospace work,
Oh,
and then I got
which MFA program were you in?
Virginia Commonwealth University.
Nice, good school.
That's where I did that in 94. I finished in 94.
Mhm.
So the death stuff sort of started while I was doing that. Because one of my professors was an amazing poet named Larry Levis.
Mhm.
He was a master at the elegy form, and it was the begin, and also a huge admirer of fine art photography.
Mhm.
So things like Sally Mann and Kudelka, Joseph Kudelka was one of the ones he loved. And so somewhere in that, if you're going to study the elegy form, you have to understand rituals around death because
Yes.
that's the elegy is part of that. And so that was the beginning of that coming in. And his love of fine art photography was the other. Um, because I
That's a really cool blend because you have the visual brain doing one thing and then the left side brain doing the other thing with the writing and you mix them together with the communication. It's
and then put
nice.
them together. Yeah, that's where it ended. And then Larry died really suddenly. And so somewhere in the middle of that sort of witch's brew of things I knew, things I was starting to understand about photography, about death rituals, and then just the utter shock of his death. And was what got me sort of on this path.
That's
So here I am. And I did a PhD in thanatology as well.
it's
Because I
thanatology.
Thanatology, that's the study of death. From a
Yeah, I
sort of
had
academic standpoint, so theory, culture, that sort of thing. A lot of people who did death work start at the bedside, working with dying people.
mhm.
And I did not. I started as an academic. I started in theory first, and in
I didn't even
literature.
know there's a course in those things. Never mind a doctorate program.
Right? Well, there
Yeah.
isn't. So I had to do interdisciplinary humanities. And then, fortunately, I was at the University of Louisville and they let you in that interdisciplinary humanities, they let you very much craft your own
Graduate
path.
independent study. That's what I did.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the liberal studies programs, the, interdisciplinary studies programs, that's where somebody who wants to study a topic that is not a major
Hmm.
um, can do that. And I had a bioethicist, a fiction writer, a photographer on my dissertation committee, and it was the perfect fit and the perfect experience. And so I didn't come to the bedside as a doula until much later.
Yeah.
So I did it backwards, but that's been sort of a theme for me. I've kind of backed into a lot of things over my
I
life.
don't think I've met a single person that's got to who they are, not what they are, who they are without like going, this isn't how I'm supposed to do it, but this is the way it happened.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, what we've noticed over our lifetime, right, is that the way you're supposed to do it doesn't work all the time anymore.
Yeah.
And it's important, I think, for people sometimes to understand that because if you have this path in mind and I'm going to do this, we don't know where those rocks are going to start moving, right?
Right.
We don't know if that rock's even going to be there.
And some doors are going to open up to great big castles, and some doors are going to open up to the Flintstones house.
Right. Or they're not even going to be there anymore. The
Yeah.
castle's not even going to be there. I mean, that's my poor students now. I look at them and I think, they're talking about 30 or 40% of jobs being gone
Yeah.
in the next 20 years. So how are they supposed to know what to major in? So I always tell them just follow what you love, where your passion is. And
Major in
this is
independent
really
study.
one of mine. Yeah, exactly, right. And show them what you got, get the experience outside of that and just prove it that way. Because if you love it, you'll always find a way to do it.
Yeah.
And that sounds Pollyanna, but I really do believe that.
I have a friend who has a degree in crossword puzzles.
Seriously.
They went to NYU, studied with the fellow who does all the crossword puzzles at the New York Times, and decided that
Wow.
they were going to do a puzzle degree, and that's what they got a PhD in.
Amazing. Well, I mean, and I bet there's a lot to that. I mean, it's a huge cultural thing, right? People love it. And how do you pick the right question? So that makes
Yeah.
total
And
sense.
how do you get people interested in in paying attention to what the question is? Which I didn't think was
Right.
a big deal, but it's a huge deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. That was her thesis was that or their thesis. They don't go by she anymore. They go by
Mm.
that. I hate wrong pronouncing people. Um, so this is a really amazing idea. So of all the, I mean, you could have gone a completely different route. You could have gone into the caring, the hospice side of things. I mean, if that was your interest, but why was that specifically your interest? The idea that somebody needs a travel partner on the way out the door.
Well, I think the more, well, one, if you experience a lot of death in your life, um, you start to see a lot of patterns, I think. And one thing that I mentioned when you and I were first on before we were recording is when you see somebody who's dying, they're in an incredibly vulnerable situation, and on a lot of levels, including with sometimes people in their own families or people who they love,
Hmm.
because we're this profoundly death denying culture. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
We're also the ways we do deal with things around, the typical, I'm talking about,
Especially the United States, specifically the
oh, we're the
American culture
worst.
is absolutely horrible about it.
Yes. We are the worst. And we would never say that. We would never people will point to things like, oh, I'm wearing my dad's ashes on a bead around my
I
neck
have
and
I have my
you know,
friend's ashes in an amethyst on my ring. Yeah,
yes, exactly. And
yeah.
people will look at that and they'll be like, "What? I'm completely death accepting. I'm making my funeral playlist and I'm doing all of that."
You're doing the good
But
capitalist things that you do.
well, and that's a big part of it is there's a capitalist part of it and there's also it's becoming weirdly a brand. It's becoming a trend, and that's been fascinating to watch over the past 15 or 20 years. It's not that death wasn't always cool. I mean, look at the Victorians. It was
Oh, yeah.
it was three-quarters of their culture.
Oh, yeah. The
People,
whole thing with the hair.
the hair art, yes, and
Yeah.
all of that, and just the packages of things that people would buy, and wearing morning clothes even when you weren't in mourning, and
I'm from
you
an
know,
Italian family, so the women that wear black for the rest of their
yeah.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole nine yards. And so, and of course we're heavily influenced by that. And that hit us, the Victorian age hit us at a time, that was the Civil War, where we were having to really, really think about whether the rituals that we had, because the thing of it, we had a ritual called the Good Death,
Yeah.
and not a good death, the good death,
Good.
and and so we had this sort of perfect ritual. It had been working since the 13th century for us. It was a bunch of steps. It was 6 or 7 steps, and if you went through these steps, no matter how much of a dirtbag you'd been in your life,
Uh-huh.
honestly, if you went once you were told that you were dying, and you had to be told that you were dying. You started this process, and if you went through this process in these steps, you were guaranteed to go to heaven.
It was the
And
precursor to double A. I mean, the AA program took a lot of that.
yes, and just you do these steps, and when you do these steps, regardless of sort of what you've done in your life, you do them. So you're told you're dying, you die at home, you die around your family.
Yeah, the
You
parlor. People don't
Yes,
realize the parlor in your house was where your family would go when they were, oh, we're gonna see grandma today. Oh, well, how's she doing?
yeah.
She's dead. We're going to the parlor. Okay. Oh,
Yeah, and from that we get all of the flowers because of course you needed that, the wreaths of flowers, and depending on the time of year you really needed them, and the 3-day vigil and all of those kinds of things. But when you went through this process, you that was it. But everybody was around that dead body. We were very death
it wasn't
accepting.
taboo. It wasn't a big scary thing.
No, at all. And instead now we have this profoundly death denying culture that has made it into, my goth kids that I have now, the students, they're all into taxidermy and they're wearing the skulls and they're wearing the black clothes and the
And they
black
get the
eyeliner.
face fillers, so when they do finally kick, they just turn into plastic puppets.
Yeah, I mean, it's been very strange to see as a child of the 80s, or a child technically of the 70s, but having been
I'm
in
with
high
you.
school,
I'm with you. I was born in
having
64,
been in
so
the 80s and watched sort of the goth movement and the death rocker and all of that, seeing that all kind of come back, and I'm glad that it's at least putting it on the landscape for them. But what it's doing is it's a trend. It's fashion. And it's capitalism. It's what kind of tree are you going to be?
mhm.
I'm gonna be a tree. And I always say, my poor students, I'm always like, you're not going to be a tree. Don't start with me on that, okay?
I'm going to
You're
be coral.
Oh, the people are hugely defended about the tree thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta tell you, because as soon as I go, you're not actually going to change species and become ever living, and actually your ashes make the soil more acidic, so it makes it harder for the tree to grow. So the tree is growing despite you. So not only are you not a tree, but the poor tree is going, put
Robin
some
Williams'
chemicals
ashes
on.
were spread over a beach where everybody was running, so he could make them cough.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, that's better than, but but nobody does that and says they're going to be the beach.
Yeah.
Nobody gets their ashes put in the ocean and says they're the ocean.
Anyway.
But the tree thing, oh, they've got our number on that. They're like, you want to be an oak or an evergreen? And people are paying a fortune for this. And I sit there and think, what happens if the tree dies? We
Or
already are
after,
in
they mow it down and you end up getting,
yeah.
somebody put in a mall or something.
Yeah, or
A car
somebody's dog is
dealership.
wetting on it, or you have to, or it gets struck by lightning. I mean, it's hard enough to grieve somebody. Why on earth would you do that to
Yeah.
yourself? So I've been really interested to see how sort of cool the death positivity movement has its heart in the right place, and it's been
Hmm.
around for a long time. It's been around since the 70s,
Yeah.
basically, and
Well,
you know.
using the non-formaldehyde burials and things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, or just being death positive. That was the start. The 70s was when we got the Hemlock Society, which is now called Compassionate Choices. And,
Yeah.
people had seen at that point 50 years roughly of the medicalized death that we were treated to after the Civil War.
Yeah.
By the 20s, we'd gone from like 60 hospitals to something like 350
We were
because
allowed to put our animals to sleep, but not our grandpa.
exactly.
Yeah.
People had taken a good look at that and seen what that looked like. I mean, this was the age of, when I was a kid, there were visiting hours and
Yeah.
they really tightly, because it was very much an experiment. And of course it was, because we didn't know what we know now about a lot of things. And we know now because of these things people were doing. But what
Were,
it did
were
was
you
make for
were you
miserable
also
deaths.
were you also around? I'm sure you were. The like 7 members of my family died of AIDS. And during
Um,
that whole, in the late 80s, mid 80s, really, to the mid 90s, even, that whole lost group of people that because there was so much ignorance by choice, which is my least favorite disease, um, that would make me bananas.
Yes. And kudos to, like, the AIDS quilt was one of the first sort of public death art projects. And it forced, through its proxy presence and the way it traveled. Because remember, there
And
were,
still to this day, yeah,
oh, yeah, which is wonderful because a lot of people who are younger don't even know that happened. Our ability to forget as a culture is pretty epic at this point. And so the ability for that to stand in proxy and put a face on all
hmm
of those people who died was I mean, I don't think I know what it did for the AIDS movement, but I don't think people will ever understand what that did for death acceptance in this culture on some level.
right.
Um, and that was a time people felt, that was the jaws of pandemics. I heard Peter Benchley say one time that Jaws was the perfect horror movie because it was completely avoidable. You could let yourself get completely terrified
Yes,
because as long as you stayed out of the water,
yeah,
you were fine,
yeah,
And so, unlike something like The Exorcist, where everybody's, seeing it and everything and worried that it's going to happen all the time, Jaws was the avoidable terror. And I think for a lot of people, they felt erroneously, but they felt as though AIDS was sort of a way that they could fully engage as well because it didn't affect them, they didn't
yeah,
think.
yeah.
And so it was this mortality sort of event that was washing over the culture in this huge way. And a lot of people who were not affected by it, I think, were able to become affected by the very young people the
Mm,
very tragic deaths that were going on. And it was very visible in a way. And visibility of death on the landscape is one of the things that we really need. Um,
hmm.
as cremation is now 70% of burials in this country. And cemeteries are going the way of the dodo. They're one of the few things that we actually have to be able to, the pandemic, which I had really high hopes would help us
Yeah,
with,
wake up a lot of people.
made it worse. I think it made it much, much worse.
People just want to do this.
And they did. I mean,
Yeah.
I still will very occasionally have a student who will say in my death class that the pandemic was a hoax, and as people, I at the time was teaching, and I was working with respiratory therapy students who were going in to terminally extubate people because they knew how to use the machines, and it was all hands on deck. And
Yeah.
good friend of mine at Mount Sinai, and I was hearing, all of this frontline stuff from people. And, so that's one of the few things that will really make me angry is when I hear things like that. Because, boy, the one thing I know when somebody says something like that is it didn't happen to anybody you knew, obviously.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because if it did, you wouldn't be saying that.
Right. And if anybody is close to a family member who's still dealing with COVID, by the way, uh,
Mhm.
even walking by somebody's room and you hear that rasp, every breath sounds like a death rattle.
Yes.
Every
And
breath does.
yes, and then people are saying long COVID is and then it's just like we're so incredibly defended, and yet at the same time so creepily superstitious about it as well.
Mhm.
The class I teach, the first day I say, how many of you your parents didn't want you to take this class? And like yeah, and it's more than you would think. It's more than half usually, and it's always the mothers. It's always the mothers because they have that sort of my
I
teacher
got
said,
your back too.
yeah, well, you don't talk about it, right? Because
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
talk about death, he's like hanging out in the corner and he's like, hey,
I wrote a book called Godless Grief. Oh God, it's got to be almost 20 years ago now. It was the first published atheist grief book.
wow.
Um, but a lot of the a lot of the stuff I was doing the research on it, and I've been working on updating it for 20 years, whatever. But a lot of what I was dealing with was the fact that people were afraid to talk about, well, yeah, we don't talk about that. We don't talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
My very first job, very, very first job, where I was making money was working at a senior center, uh, the Hebrew Rehabilitation Center for the Aged
Mhm.
in 1979, when people were still dealing with their Auschwitz tattoos and the Dachau tattoos,
Mhm.
and I worked in the mental ward. And just watching the families come in and out, and they're still talking about the camps like they had just happened the day before, and they'd just been released, and seeing the loss of, they didn't get to say goodbye to people, they didn't get to have their ritual, they didn't get to have their goodbye, and not realizing that there's a whole other group of people and their families that would just not even acknowledge that person existed anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's certainly easier, right? It's certainly easier not to talk about it. It's certainly easier not to think about it.
Or deny the Holocaust exists.
Yeah, or deny that it happened, or deny that it was as bad as it was, because of course we don't want to imagine that human beings are capable of that and of doing that to each other, because I mean that's half the reason it went on as long as it did, and to
Yeah,
the extent that it did, because people just refuse to believe
yeah.
that human beings are capable of that. And that myth of progress. Nothing technology or science can teach us. I mean, back in the early 1900s, nothing technology and science can teach us can ever do anything wrong.
Yeah,
We're
says the
we're
eugenics people. Yeah.
yeah, we're moving towards perfection, and we're going to perfect the human race, and we're going to do. And that was the Holocaust was the moment where we had to slam into the fact that, I mean, what was the concentration camp except industrialized killing and
Right.
processing of human corpses?
Yeah.
And
It's a
so it
meat
was,
factory. Yeah.
yeah, so everything we had developed at that point was then turned to this horrible project, and it really pulled people up a lot, I think. I'm not sure that we're not thinking of redoing some of those lessons, because that's
I
the
feel like we're
problem.
already in the
Yeah, I
that.
mean
Yeah.
we've forgotten a lot, and and we need to remember.
Yeah, the saddest, I heard it mentioned the other day, the saddest part about the 1930s Germany and the 19 or the 2000, 20s America is that we've got the movies, we've got the history books, we've got the films, and people just don't want to look at them.
Right. They're just like, oh, that's old. That doesn't have anything to do.
Yeah,
Whereas I'm like,
that's
we
yeah,
still haven't gotten over the Civil War and how that's rippling
yeah.
through our culture. I mean, the disruption of our death rituals started there because, what do you do with this? What do you do if you've got 160,000, 150,000 missing in action soldiers and then all of these others who were never got to go through that ritual I was talking about? Well, you got two choices. They're all in hell
Yeah.
and we'll never see them again, and they're lost to us forever, or we're going to pitch the ritual out. And that's what they did. They threw the ritual completely out. And but that was the beginning of that splintering. I'm certainly not going to advocate for us all having the same belief system, and because the only way that happens is at the tip of a bayonet, and we all know
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and the differences are what make us amazing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
But the loss of some common sense of belief, the loss of some common ritual around death and dying, the loss of all the individualization of death has not been good for us. We don't have, I mean, people cut into the line when a funeral is going by. It was an incredibly communal event for us before. I mean, the church bells tolled, and it was, I think it was one for a man, two for a woman, three for a child. And the minute we
wow.
saw that, everybody knew who it was
Yeah.
because you knew. And then it began to toll the number of years. And so you're like, oh no, it's a 2-year-old child. Oh, it must be the Johnsons. Oh no. And everybody just dropped what they were doing, literally, like they stopped and they went.
Mhm.
And they went to help. They went to the sextons dug the grave, people brought food. They made sure somebody was there to help dress the body and be there for the family. And
Mhm.
they got that done. They got it, and everybody knew. And then for a month, that person was not expected to do anything for themselves.
Yeah.
Now somebody dies, and your work gives you what,
You
3 days?
get 12 hours bereavement leave.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, here you got 3 days, and so and that's generous. 3
Yeah.
days for
And
that
you
is
don't get the Brady photo with the dead child in your lap. Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Although we're doing that again,
Oh,
we are
yeah.
doing that again.
I've started to see some artists do that, and I was pretty impressed. So,
Yeah, I actually I was recently trained to be a pediatric end of life doula, and pediatric doulas do more with the family than they do with the actual dying child because that's a really specific kind of work. Their child life specialists are the people who really handle the children, and
mhm.
bless them, that is some really, really hard work. To be able to make that event make sense to a child has got to be just, But one of the things that I'm planning on doing with my pediatric doula work is I'm going to take those pictures for people because those legacy projects um, are so important to them.
The guy
So,
has a motorcycle. I love that one.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, he's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
the extreme embalming people are
Yeah. I
yeah,
love that stuff.
the we have one there's one picture I think is my favorite. There's a guy who is he's at his wake in his video game chair, and they've got him leaned back and he's got his PS2 controller in his hands and his hat on backwards, and he literally has like Doritos and a soda to the side. And
Perfect.
every time I show that, I'm like, well, that's a Friday night at my house,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
we're big gamers here. And I'm just like, yeah, that's perfect. That's
I got
perfect.
Baldur's Gate going right now.
But I always wonder, I hope they tell people, because that's gonna, surprise the hell out of somebody if they show up and they didn't know John was gonna be here. I mean, they knew he'd be here, but they
And
didn't know.
Grandpa passed out. Oh, shoot.
Oh my gosh, he's still in his chair. What are we doing? But like I said, is that my question is that death acceptance or is it death denial? You see how it
Yeah,
could be either one.
yeah. It
I
could
mean,
be,
of course
well,
they
the
know
thing
he's
when
dead.
Body Worlds was touring the world, You know,
Yep. Oh yeah.
I've got I was, because I have Ehlers-Danlos, so I'm like, well, maybe I can donate because my body goes all different ways.
You
So,
got to pay him now, I think.
yes, exactly. That's what they
Yes.
were saying. It's like
You
hundred
got to
fifty
pay
thousand
him.
dollars to
Yeah.
do
Yeah,
it.
he used to take donations in the
Yeah,
Skuntervagen. He used to take donations, and now so many people want to do it. Have you actually seen it?
I have twice now. I saw it when it was in Chicago, and I
Yeah.
saw it was in Los Angeles. So it's pretty.
Amazing. I saw it in Chicago too. I thought you looked familiar. I
I
mean,
knew
I know
it.
me and 10,000 of our closest friends, I have like the 9:30 at night entrance thing. And
I was
and
at 7:45, so maybe
yes,
it was.
and I got, oh no, we probably were in line, but man, I had a great experience with that. Because when I do things like this, because I am an academic in this subject, I'm interested in the thing. Of course, I'm interested in the exhibit,
Mhm.
but I'm also interested in watching people watch the exhibit. I'm interested in watching people interact with the exhibit,
And see
and
what the responses are.
and I don't know if you've read. Have you ever read Ursula Le Guin's The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas?
I have not.
No, most in this, I mean, the basic gist of it is there's a world where everything is perfect and utopian, and after a certain amount of time when you live there, they take you to this little closet, spoiler, where there's a little kid who is suffering, and you're told basically that his suffering is what gives everybody else their happiness, and and you have to make some people are fine with it. They're like, well, one person suffers, so everybody can be okay. And the other one, but then there are, as the title says, the ones who walk away from home loss, the ones who can't deal with it.
Yeah.
When I was reminded of that when I was watching that watching people at the exhibit is, you have the people who are sticking their nose up against the glass and they're
Hmm.
pointing at things and
The kids
they're
like going to the museums. Where's the mummies? Yeah, exactly.
yeah, exactly. And or taking pictures next to them and doing all this. And then you'd see one person who would be standing there and they go, and you see it. Like, because the only way that exhibit works is if you don't think about what you're looking at. And
Right.
all of a sudden there would be somebody who would see it and
Human being.
leave. Literally just get up and go. And so that was a great one. There were the infants that
Hmm.
were the separate thing.
Yeah, you
And
could. You had to go to a special room because they didn't want some
yeah.
people to get upset. So
Yeah, well, you had to opt in. You
yeah,
had to opt into that, and
yeah,
I thought that was an incredibly interesting thing for them to do was to be like, you're seeing all this and you opted into this, but this is different.
yeah,
This is going to
yeah.
be different,
A
and
guy's
so
scrotum shaped like a happy face. That's one thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
Exactly. Or
know?
the poor person, the guy who was the basketball player who
Yes.
with his tongue hanging out with
Oh,
like Michael Jordan and
yeah. Yeah, I still have the book. I still go through the book with
it's an
catalog's amazing.
amazing thing, but I'm back there with the infants and there's a woman there with a toddler walking around and you want to talk about uncomfortable. Everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, why is this
Ugh.
toddler?" And I'm sitting there watching. Sorry, this is going on forever. I'm in there watching and the little baby goes up to one of the ones that's like 13 weeks and he goes to the 15-week one and he goes, "This baby's bigger than this baby." And the mom goes, "Yes." And he goes, "And this one's bigger than this one." And she goes, "Yes." And he says, "Well, will this one get as big as that one?" And she goes, "No, no, no." And I'm like, "Well," and he says, "Why?" And we all stop because here's where the rubber's going to meet the road,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, here we go. Like,
Let's
what
see
is
how
she
parenting works, Ma.
like, where is she gonna, where is death in this? And
Yeah.
that was my question when I sat there. I'm like, oh, here we go. What's she gonna say? And she goes, oh, because they're not real, you know? And, at the bottom of it, I just was like, but they are,
Yeah.
and that was what I saw in that exhibit is the only way you could really get through it was by not thinking about who that person was
Mm.
and not thinking about the circumstance that put that person there. And it was, death denial on display. And you would
And then
see
sharing that dishonesty with that little kid.
exactly,
Yeah.
I mean, I know what is she supposed to say? Because he's a toddler. He has no understanding whatsoever. But I also wondered why would she bring him there? You
Hmm.
know, um, if there can't be any kind of a meaningful interaction. But when she said they're not real, I mean, here goes five more people who are walking away from Omelas because you could tell the cognitive dissonance was just too much for
Yeah.
so many people. And so it was fascinating to experience that and watch other people experience it, you know.
What was your very first time being in the room with somebody who was passing, like, for you?
Um, the
As
first
not as a human being, but as a professional.
as a professional.
Yeah, because it's
Um,
a whole different experience. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time, more of my time has been spent with people before they die,
Mhm.
terminally ill people before they die, or people well after. I've spent a lot of time in cadaver labs. Um, so it's actually sort of, I was an 11th hour volunteer
Mm.
at a hospice in Louisville, but 11, their 11th hour are people so that somebody who is right at the point of death so that they are not by themselves when they die.
Yeah,
So the family member just can't has to go home and get some sleep, you know, that sort of thing. They've got to have a rest. They bring in the 11th hour volunteer to make sure somebody is there.
yeah.
So I was trained to do that, and but she even warned me when I did the training. She said we've only had like two of those people actually die while somebody's there,
Mhm.
while a volunteer is there. So you may not get a call this whole year to do
Mhm.
that. It's very hard to be in the room. It's very hard to time it as an not as a family member.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
because of my job, I can't do this sort of doulas are usually hired on a contract basis in the last month or two of somebody's life, and they do a very intensive, they're with them all the time, and they
Mhm.
have to be on call all the time. And I don't have that kind of job
Yeah,
anymore. So most of what I do a lot of consulting with families ahead of time, or I'm their contact person. So they call and go, she's doing this. I don't understand. What is it? You know, that sort of thing. And I go, no, no, that's completely normal.
yeah. Like when
Or
somebody sees the, for
yeah,
the first time, that's
the breath
unusual.
hitching and all of that. Or the nearing death awareness is the thing that really scares the hell out of people. The people seeing just seeing people who've died, and being like, or they start with the talk of traveling, the we need to check out of this hotel, or the cab is waiting, or my brother John is waiting to pick me up, or where's my passport, we need to go to the airport. Just this symbolic language of dying.
Yeah,
And
the going
which
home line. Yeah.
yeah, because the body doesn't know death, but it knows leaving really, really well. And I think that's something I said in the talk is it really understands leaving very well. And but it doesn't have the language for what it's going through. And so somebody will call me up and be like, she's saying this and she's completely lost her mind, and of course psychosis is something that we deal with at end of life. But not in those situations. I'm like, well, she knows she's going,
Hmm.
So just you play along. That
Yeah,
was the advice I was given with NDA with nearing death awareness is just you just go with it. Just go with it. If somebody wants their passport, go get them their passport.
yeah,
Or tell them, and I think this was one family I told them, I said, well, just tell her that you've talked to the desk downstairs and that they're going to hold the room until that you're not in a hurry. Don't worry about it. They
yeah.
don't, they're fine for you to be in the room until you don't need it. And it just to whatever you do to lessen that anxiety. So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of family mediation because, like I was saying, a lot of the problems that a person who is dying has are with their interpersonal relationships and amongst the interpersonal relationships in their family or their group of friends
Mhm.
because nothing brings out all of the tension and all of the old cups
Yep.
that people have been shining until somebody's dying. I mean,
Right.
one of the steps of the good death is that what they think once you're told you're dying, they used to think that you were incapable of telling a lie
Yeah.
magically, like boom. And I said, well,
Suddenly,
that's
suddenly, I confess to the murder of JFK.
exactly. Well,
Yeah.
because why do people lie? They lie to avoid consequence.
Yeah.
And a person who's dying doesn't have them. But frankly, I think what they were doing was they were watching dying people who all of a sudden just start belting out everything they've ever wanted to say.
Yeah.
And because they do. They're like, I'm so
Well,
sick of you all
I
fighting
am
about
thinking of Sam Kinison when he was on the side of the road. You know, he got that car accident, and the first thing out of his mouth was, "Yeah, I got to talk to the booking agent because we forgot to tell him this." And I'm like,
this.
"Yeah, I got to go back and get my tire because the tire went flat. Did you see the tire go flat? Yeah, the tire went flat.
Oh
Okay."
my gosh. I forgot about Sam Kennison. Boy, he was one of those people. I think there were all these comedy specials that were like Sam Kennison in hell because of
Yeah,
all the things.
exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, the man took blasphemy to an art form.
Because he
Um,
used to be a minister. I mean, come on.
yeah, who better, right? To
Exactly.
really take it to the next level. But yeah, but I think that's a lot of what they do is that, the family starts bickering about something around them and they turn around and go, just shut up. Stop fighting in front of me. I'm so sick of the two of you.
Yeah,
And, or they don't want to see somebody. And of course, everybody else wants to, they want to have their closure and they want to feel good about what happened. But the dying person,
it's
like
not
I was
about the
saying,
living person. It's
yeah,
just,
they're incredibly
yeah,
vulnerable. They're vulnerable to what the medical profession tells them or doesn't. They're vulnerable to being, I mean, they're terrified of being left alone. They're terrified of being forgotten
yeah.
after they're gone. They're terrified of having no independence, no autonomy. And there are so many things you can do. I mean, the statistic, I think this was like 2019, dying people spend on average 18 hours a day alone. Alone. Because our cultures, Western culture, US culture is not, in particular, is not built for us to be able to be there
Yeah,
for them. And then if you have somebody with dementia or you have people of color, that is the even higher rates of time that they spend alone.
that's
And
heartbreaking.
so I know, and that's so easy.
Mm,
I mean, it's not because like I just said the culture, but if that's one thing I have the best students. And the minute they hear that, they're like, we need to do something about that.
yeah,
Because it's just being there, reading to them or
being present
something.
is a very hard thing.
Yeah, but it
Yeah,
is, but our culture does make it really hard.
yeah. We're in the
And
ADHD world.
yes, and this is a culture where you are what you do. You are what you earn, you are your work.
Yeah,
And
it's not hi, how are you? What do you do for a living? I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
And
Meanwhile,
it,
you go to places like Malaysia and you have a weekend every month where everybody's okay, this is our celebration of this family member. This is our celebration of that family member, or you go to some parts of Greece or some parts of Syria. It's like our culture's doing this and our culture's doing that. And then you come to the United States like, hey, we got a funeral home.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. And after that was the Civil War story where the women were like, "Hell no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not wearing mourning clothes. I'm sick of taking care of a body. I'm
Yeah.
tired of it." I mean, we got people who spent 5 years in mourning clothes and dealing with dead bodies, and they said, "Forget it," and pitched it out. And then, and the culture was, of course, perfectly happy to do that. The guy, he had the funeral parlor guy, of
I was
course,
gonna
had.
say the first time I saw a funeral, the funeral parlor museum. I was like,
Oh,
the whole history of that. It's
I
a
know, and it's amazing because I mean, of course, all he had was the house that everybody else had, and he didn't change his
hmm
because then the architectural styles change, and what on the plans you can see it. What does the parlor become? They changed the name, and it's the living room.
exactly.
Um, because they're like, welcome to American Death Denial, and in the early part of the 20th century, and we see it wash over everything. We see it in the cemetery. We see the individualization of headstones. We see, we don't go to viewings, we go to visitations because you view a body, you visit a person, and now we don't even do that. Now we go
Yeah.
to celebrations of life, which, interestingly, just gets death completely out of it. And
Well, as a
um,
stand-up comedian, I used to get hired to go to people's funerals and do routines about the dead guy.
oh, you're kidding me. That's amazing.
That was a big business for a while.
Oh my gosh. Well, see, that's a great. Meanwhile, in China, they hire mourners to cry.
Yes, well, they do that in Detroit too.
Oh, amazing. And so we gotta.
Whalers, they call the whalers. Yeah.
I'm saying that's fair. I'd rather get paid to be a whaler at least. Although, why don't you just do it yourself? But we're not. I mean, with this culture, whoa. I mean, it makes people. You tell somebody that you have a family member die, and people just avoid you. They because they don't know what to say because we've
Right.
lost all that language.
Anything you need, just let me know. Just not on Tuesday, Wednesday,
Yeah,
Thursday. Maybe not on
Yeah.
a day with a Y in it. Maybe.
Yeah, and that's so hard. I mean, people do really want to do something. Even when
Yeah.
somebody's dealing with a serious illness, when somebody's died, they really do want to do something. But the thing you need to do is not ask. You need to just do it.
Do.
You need to do things like, "Hey, I'm going to book a house cleaner for you."
Yes.
Or they have dogs. Do you want somebody? I'm gonna have somebody come over and walk your dogs. I'm gonna bring you food. It's the asking
Yeah, I'm
is
bringing over a
asking.
friend of mine committed suicide. The first thing we do is we took his widow in, and she said, "Okay, we're gonna watch a movie." Of course, we picked yeah. What was it? It was like something with somebody dying in it. It was like, oh, we picked a stupid movie. You know?
She probably appreciated it. It
She
was,
laughed her ass off. She spent her whole time laughing her ass off.
yeah, and she needs that. I mean, that's
Yeah,
what people need. They need company. They need, there's so much, and that is a lot of other things. That's another thing that doulas do is we try to deal with those appointments. We try to be the person who people can talk to so we can say she needs this, 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 and this.
yeah.
We try to make sure everybody doesn't show up when it's not a good time. We
And the
do.
whole judging thing, that's what I was going to ask you about too. There's a whole big thing about self-judgment and the judging other people in that a person's life. Well, you never stood by that person when A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
Or you're the
Well,
only you're trying to be the mod of the family because you're hanging out with her when she's dying. Meanwhile, everybody else who wants to do something, you won't let them do anything. I hear these conflicts and I just go
oh
bananas.
yeah. Well, there is a trope. There is a role that is a friend of mine who ran a hospice facility. They called them the brother from the brother from Florida
Uh-huh.
or the sister from Ohio. That was the code. They would say to the person, they'd be like, hey, the brother from Florida is coming today.
Hmm.
And what that meant was the family member who has been waiting to know if the person is really going to die or if
Yeah.
this is just another scare. The person who's been waiting to know is going to show up. And what that person's going to do is do that very condescending pat, usually the daughter, usually the youngest daughter,
Yeah.
pat
You did
her
what
on
you
the
could. Yeah.
pat her on the shoulder and say, "You've done enough, Sarah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'll take it from here," because they're going to try to be the hero at the end of
Yeah.
that story.
The
And
family martyr.
so it was the brother from Florida, sister from Ohio, and the other thing they called them were seagulls. Because they come up from the beach, usually Florida. They come up from the beach and flap around and shit all over everything that is going on.
Are the
Um,
ones that are over in that person's house while that person's in the hospital going, that really that painting looks great with my couch.
yeah, or people start calling, that's mine, that's
Yeah.
mine, that's
Look,
mine,
my
that's
dad, you'll
mine.
love this. My dad, who's 84 years old, uh, went around the house last year on his 83rd birthday and he took blue stickers, pink stickers, and yellow stickers. Okay, your sister gets this, your sister gets this, your sister gets this. Dunk, 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 dunk. So there's no question. Oh,
Well, and
these hasn't been
good.
called for yet.
Well, and it's good because the fights over ashes.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. The splitting the person up, they're cutting them up like cocaine lines because
yeah.
everybody's gotta have their piece.
Hey,
And
by the way, when you die, where does that go?
yeah, I mean,
I don't think about things like that.
yeah, I mean, it would just like this. That's why people have got to have living wills. But the more death denying a culture is, the less likely they are to do
Well,
that.
let's go ahead and explain what a living will is, because I
Living
understand
will,
completely.
a
Yes.
living will is a document that it's different from a will. Okay, will is your stuff. Where you want your stuff to go. A
Right.
living will is if I am in a situation where I am not going to get better. Um, if I'm to the
Going
point,
mush pile. Yeah.
yeah, where there's some question of whether I'm going to wake up from a coma, whether I'm intubated and I'm not going to ever be able to get off of
Yeah. Necrosis
the
has
group.
happened throughout my limbs. I am turning black from
Yeah, and I don't want to live that way. I mean, you need to have the conversation with people, number one, but you also need to, it is a document you fill out and you say, and you got to be real careful with it in the sense that it's not just intubation. It can be things like feeding tubes. It can
hmm
be all of these
Pain
things
medications
to
and
say, yeah, pay, what do I want? What do I want if I'm in that situation? And you fill that out ahead of time, you initial things. You can put comments like mine is so specific, of the things that I absolutely do not want. I mean, my spouse knows I do not want anything, no heroics. I'm very conscious of the cost
yeah,
of things as well. I don't want my whole family being bankrupted to keep me alive for an extra two
queen of
weeks.
cheap. I totally
You
get
know,
it. Yeah.
It's not because, I mean, you see some of this. I grew up in the time of Terry Schiavo, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and you see things like that, and you think, I don't ever want to end
Karen
up,
and Quinlan. Yeah, Karen and
you
Quinlan
know.
was the one that hit me when I was in high
Oh yeah,
school.
yeah, okay, yeah. That she was the precursor of that, and I mean, we had these cases that got very, very, huge in terms of the cultural landscape, and
Right to death, right to life. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I mean, poor
right.
Terry Schiavo and the Pope is involved, and I mean, all this stuff.
Yeah,
And George W. Bush is
only in America.
Jeb Bush is trying to pass a law to protect her. I mean, you're just like, look, this woman's been gone for a really long time, and the
Yeah,
way medical intervention is, and it's not medicine's fault. We demand a level of perfection and clairvoyance and all kinds of stuff from them.
that
And so,
hope word carries a lot of weight. I
yeah,
hope
we
she's
don't.
going to
I
be
mean,
fine.
we
There's,
just don't know sometimes, but we do. But in some cases, we do. And hers, they knew her brain was
oh
destroyed.
yeah, she was. Yeah,
And so a living will can be like, I do not want to be on feeding tubes. I do not want to be intubated. I do not want epinephrine. I don't want CPR because don't break my entire rib cage on
yeah,
the.
exactly. My sternum's crushed into my chin because you
Yeah,
told me that I need to
exactly.
live a
And
little longer.
but thank you, Grey's Anatomy and all of these shows don't. There's I mean, somebody has CPR on on a medical drama, and they're up walking around two scenes later, and you want to be like, that's not
Not how it works.
or
That poor
tricked.
woman who had to give birth, brain dead woman had to give birth because the government decided to interfere with her.
Yeah, because we can't, and meanwhile the husband doesn't even have any say in things like that. And we're the living will gets everybody out of your room.
And you don't have to be in their 50s and 60s and 70s. Like that gal was
No,
31. I mean,
No, I
yeah,
mean, I tell my students, get a living will when you're 18, get life insurance too, because once you're sick,
that's
once
it.
you have a medical condition, you can't get it depending on what it is. And so I say, you guys could be paying $28 a month now for life insurance. And by the
Yeah.
time you're 40, you can borrow against that.
1500 by the time you're 60.
Exactly. And you can borrow against that for cancer treatment if you need it. You can,
Yep.
it's a savings account for your future.
Yeah.
But oh boy, but some of them do it, and the parents get really upset because we have that word voodoo, I'm invoking it. And that's why when death anxiety is really high in our culture, people don't fill out living wills. They don't fill out organ donation cards
Which is
because
sad.
because
Yeah.
we're terribly superstitious. And I'm tempting fate if I bring something like that in. So people are dying with, they always think, well, I'll deal with that when I'm in the ICU. Well, it's
How do you know? How do you know you're going to deal with it when you're
upward
in
of
the ICU?
90%.
Yeah,
Well,
it's like
90% of people in the ICU are can't make that decision either because of their
exactly.
medical condition or their medications.
Exactly.
So then the family is left with, the brother from Florida and the
It's
sister
like,
from Ohio,
yeah.
and everybody going into their house and starting to call their property and saying, I'm going to be the one who keeps the ashes. And you just watch families explode.
Yeah.
And the poor dying person is in the middle of all of this, watching this.
There's
There's a
no stress in dying at all.
no, not at all. And that's the other thing that a doula does is they try to keep that under control. I mean, there was a great thing I was taught. If when people come into a dying person's room, everybody who comes in, that room is their sky,
Yeah.
and everybody who comes in is weather.
That's
Be
a
good
great way of
weather.
putting it. I love that.
Be good weather. And if there's any storms, it needs to either be in the hall or outside
Yeah.
because they don't, this is
Take that to
all
Mount Hood and ski on it on your own time.
exactly. Scream at each other in the far away,
Yeah.
and do what you need to do. But my job is to keep that sky clear and to keep that weather clear. Because people talk over them. If heaven forbid, I mean, sound is one of the hearing is the last sense to go, and people will talk around somebody who is unconscious as though they can't hear them. And they can most likely, so we don't need to be having these conversations about what we're going to do with the body. Um, it's we have so little understanding of this process. And what I have always been struck by is this terribly vulnerable person, including in the cadaver lab,
Yeah.
this terribly vulnerable person who is in the middle of this situation. And I can't help it. I always just see the person. I always see the person, and I never see the body, no matter how dissected they are, no matter how wasted they are, no matter how unconscious or drugged they are.
They were somebody's child at one
I
point.
see the person, and I can't stand to see that person. All we have at a certain after a certain point is our ending,
Mhm.
and I can't stand to see that. I want everybody's story to end well.
Mhm.
Um, and that is a lot of reframing. Dying is a huge time of meaning making, and it's a lot of reframing people's experiences. It's a lot of helping them to make peace with things. It's
It's a lot like creating poetry.
well, I've always said, between the symbolic language of dying, of understanding what somebody's saying when they're saying something,
Mhm.
and helping people understand how to re-see their own story. I think actually starting off as a creative writer was the best thing I could do,
Mhm.
you because it gives me a vantage point that I think sometimes people, and I'm not certainly dissing people who go into oncology or hospice care and that sort of thing, but it's a very medical experience, I think,
Right.
when they start, not the people who've been doing it for a long time. They totally get. But I think even some young people who go into it and they're like, I'm going to deal with it. It's still an event. Death is still an event, and death is an enormously long process.
Yeah.
And I would say even people, I'm 57 now, and I would say even, I'm at the point where 50 is where in your 50s is where you start to lose your peers. Um,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
so
A lot of them start
yeah,
disappearing. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and that is a real different thing, and it brings it onto your landscape, I think, in a really, really different way.
Viewing
And
your own mortality is a big slap in the face for a lot of
well,
people.
even in culture, I mean, there have been some celebrity deaths that have just blown my mind. Losing Robin Williams was really hard. Losing Rob
I
Reiner
still
was,
I still cry over Robin Williams
I
because
can't watch his movies,
I can't either. And I knew the guy in a different way than a lot of other people knew him. But again, it's one of those situations where you have somebody that is so ingrained in your world, whether
Yeah,
there's personally or not. I'm trying to think. Oh, Chris Cornell, the musician, when he died,
yeah.
I wasn't one of his neighbors or his family members or
Mhm.
anything, but when he died, it was like, ugh.
Yes. Well, because that's your tribe. You
Yeah,
know, for some reason, these people, I mean, I watched Mork and Mindy and, all of this. For some reason, those people and I were here. They were my landscape
there was
growing
never a
up.
world where you didn't have each other.
That was, this is my, and so what I'm seeing, even with the celebrities, Rob Reiner's
Rob
death,
Reiner.
I look at that and I think, well, my tribe is only here for a certain period of time.
Yeah,
We're here to add to this project and add to this story and write our little tiny piece of it, and then we're all just going to go,
yeah.
and a new tribe
Except
takes
for
over.
Dick Van Dyke, he's going to be around another 30 years.
I know. Well, we said that about Betty White, and
Yeah, that's true. Look what
he
we did to
catches,
her.
but she went joyfully,
Yeah,
and maybe
with
we all.
animals, and she had a dog in her lap. That was
Exactly.
perfect.
I mean, Carrie Fisher, I look at these people and I'm like, these people have been with me my whole life and they're going. And so one day, as Larry Levis said so well, my father died, and someday and thus gave permission. And someday I shall be so honored, to go too. And there's nothing, I want people to understand the part of the process that we are just going to take part in, that it's not, when somebody's like, oh well, so somebody's grandmother died and she was 98, what a tragedy. And I'm like, it's a tragedy for you, it's a personal loss for you, but death, it is not inherently traumatic, and it is not always tragic. It's what we're here to do. You punched your ticket when you got here,
Yeah,
you
exactly,
know?
exactly.
And
You have a limited
yeah, I
expiration.
mean, somebody was in my place and I'm in somebody else's place. And that's just the way this goes. And when I go, they'll get their place and they get to have this freaking amazing ride that we've gotten to have, you know? I
And
mean,
who knows what, and like cool things like TV were great for my dad. Who, VR was great for me because I'm a video game alcoholic. And
yeah,
who's going to be next for the next person?
right. And they get to write a page or a
Yeah.
paragraph, you know? They get to or they get to have a kid who will write the next page or they get to do whatever. I mean,
There's
it's
a Calvin and Hobbes. I don't know if you're a fan of theirs, but there was a Calvin and Hobbes that had the little boy holding the tiger, and he just looks up at the night sky and he says, "I'm significant." And then all you see it pull back, and all you see is the night sky and these two little dots on the ground. Says the dust speck. And it was
yes.
so perfect.
Yes, but and we are dust specks, but we all are.
Yeah.
Even we all are. And if we could understand, I mean, if that's the great gift of this field is that constant touching back to the realization that we are all the same. I mean, regardless of what, I mean, you talk when you're around a dying person, you realize that we all want the same things. We're
Hmm.
afraid of the same things. We
Hmm.
love the same things. We're proud of the same things and ashamed of the same things.
Hmm.
And that's what we lose when we lose our contact with death. The
Yeah.
understanding of how much the same we are. So, as we're at our most profound moment of death denial in this culture, no wonder we're at our most divided, our most polarized, and our most nobody wants anything to do with each other. And I want to be like, sit by the bed of a dying person,
Right.
and you will understand.
I
The
have one last question because
Yeah, yeah, go.
I'm absolutely adoring this conversation. I absolutely adore you.
Oh,
So please let's talk again.
of course.
And don't hang up before when I log off. But as a person who didn't have children, I for whatever reasons, or other people who don't have children for whatever reasons,
Mm,
I hear a lot of people saying that when you die, you're not going to have anybody to give things to. You're not going to have anybody to say goodbye to you. You're going to be alone because you didn't have kids.
yeah.
What that whatever that means.
Mm,
I already told my adopted niece and nephew that they get everything, so they're already covered.
yeah.
So, um, but how do you deal with somebody who deals like that kind of conversation? Do you have people like that in your?
Yeah, yes. Well, I mean, and the whole idea that the only legacy that a person has, particularly a woman has, is that she has children. I don't have children. Um, I always joke and say I can't have children because I have everybody else's. I've been teaching for 35 years,
I always tell people I forgot.
yeah. Oh, I forgot to have kids. No,
Yeah.
I mean, no, I didn't want them. I mean, my career, my job, and I have more than 100 students a semester.
Hmm.
Um, I've probably taught 4 or 5 thousand people
Wow.
in my professional career, and the whole concept that the only legacy that somebody has is their children is one of the reasons why people have such hard deaths because they only have their kids.
Yeah.
We need to move from a culture of accumulation and attainment to a culture of legacy. What are you leaving behind you?
Yeah.
What friendships,
Yeah.
what kindness, what
What scars did you put on the planet?
yes,
Yeah.
or even who are you to your neighbors?
Yeah.
Who are you? What causes have you supported? Who have you taught in
Hmm.
a informal or formal way? What have you written? What have you created? And if you can look back on that, like you have no fear of death because I've done what I needed to do already.
Hmm.
Whereas somebody whose life is based on accumulation or attainment, they're always going to fall short
Right.
because you can never have enough. You can never
Right.
have the money you want. You can never have the stuff you want. You can never have the best car or the best house or I wish I'd gone to Aruba or I wish I,
Yeah. If
whatever.
only, if onlys. If you live in
Yeah,
the if
you
onlys, you
can.
don't live in the present anyway. So,
Right. Live with what you're constantly leaving behind you. Give your stuff away now.
hmm,
Get new stuff.
yeah,
If somebody,
exactly.
I love the cultures that if somebody says they love something that they have, you give it to them.
I was like that all my life.
I
I
mean,
had a
that's
woman come up to me and say they should really like my bracelet. I'm like, I don't have any attachment to this. Have it,
yeah, if you love it, take it, or somebody comes and sees a book of mine that I just, I've probably bought a copy of several of my books 10 times because I keep giving them to students.
Yeah,
Um,
Tom Robbins here. I give
you
out all
know,
my Tom Robbins books.
oh, hey, the place where I teach, he went.
Oh, that's
He's
so
one of
cool.
ours. Yeah, he's
Yay.
one of ours. Richmond, Virginia, represent.
Yay.
So if you feel like you're constantly leaving something, you're not afraid to leave
Right.
because you're here, and call that death denial or call it a job well done.
Yeah.
I mean, Rob Reiner, he changed our lives.
So,
His death was horrible and tragic and so sad, but
yeah.
he changed our lives,
And if he had forgotten to have kids, who knows? So,
right? Stick with the movies.
exactly.
Um, but no, he did. He changed our lives. Robin Williams changed my life. And
Absolutely.
and he's gone, but he's never gone.
No,
Mhm.
you could reach out. In fact, Zelda, his daughter, who I absolutely adore, reach out and feel him through his kids and feel him through his work and through just a single line. You go, oh, that's a Robin line.
The genie in Aladdin. I mean,
Yeah.
the most quotable character in history. He's always, especially since his stuff was ad-libbed so
Yes.
much.
Yes.
It's all him.
Well,
And
when I'm in the shower, every time I hear wash, rinse, repeat, good morning, Vietnam is in my head.
so you don't have to be a famous movie star or a producer. You can change people's lives today, you know, uh, in small ways, and that becomes your legacy. And if you feel you have a legacy, you don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so awesome. Dr. Amy Tudor. You have been the most amazing guest, and I hope that a lot of people watch this and wake up and want to talk to you about where do people get to talk to you or about what you do and how they reach you and
Well, they can reach me at my university address. I teach at Virginia Commonwealth University, and I'm on the website there. They can, but I'm almost finished my book on all of
this is
this.
what I want to hear about. Yes.
Yeah, I'm working on a couple of books about it. It doesn't really have a title yet, but basically, I've been teaching a death class for like 15 years, and I love it so much. I love to my class is usually really well attended and it fills every semester and we have a much more fun than you think we would. And so I finally said I'm ready to put that out in the world and let other people, because I mean we laugh a lot, and I think if people could learn and laugh at the same time about it, they'd feel okay. So this year I'm going to try to get it out, so we'll see.
Excellent, excellent. And oddly enough, this strange, weird thing happened. My next door neighbor has a heart issue, and four ambulances just drove by. So I'm
Oh, no,
wondering.
don't blame it on me because sometimes
No,
I worry,
you're the good luck fairy. It's really weird. Everybody, this has been the Antisocial Hour show. We had today Dr. Amy Tudor, and do check her out and do get her book when it comes out. We'll make sure the link is on our website so you can get to it. And we will talk to you again next
Thank
week.
you so much. It's great to
Oh,
have you.
thanks for being had. Hold on just a second. I will be with you in a minute.